People say a mother's love is equal. Mine was. Her name was Shirley, my identical twin, same eyes, same smile, same everything. Except I was the one she never chose. From the moment we were old enough to talk, Mom made sure the world saw Shirley first. "She's my pride," she'd say, brushing Shirley's curls, while mine tangled under her silence. When I wanted to run for homecoming queen, I rehearsed my speech for days. But the night before the nominations, Mom pulled me aside. "Sweetheart, why don't you let your sister have this one? She shines more in crowds." Her words burned like acid, but I stepped down, pretending I didn't care. That's what I always did, shrink myself to make room for Shirley. At school, people whispered about how close we were, how lucky I was to have a twin. If only they knew. I wasn't her other half, I was her shadow. The night Shirley won, Mom cried tears of joy. I smiled for the cameras, pretending the ache in my chest was pride. But deep down, I made a promise one day I'd stop being the girl no one saw. His name was Jonas Pierce, and for once someone saw me. We met in sophomore year, him, the quiet artist, me, the girl always one step behind her twin. Jonas said my laugh reminded him of music. We talked under the oak tree near the football field, where secrets felt safe. For the first time, I believed I could be loved for who I was. Until my mother found out. She smiled tightly and said, "Jonas seems sweet, but don't you think he's better suited for Shirley? She connects with people easier." I thought it was a joke until the next week, Jonas stopped returning my calls. I saw them together in the hallway, her arm looped through his guilt written all over his face. I didn't scream, I didn't cry, I just walked past them, because in that moment I understood something cruel, even love wasn't mine to keep. That night, I looked at my reflection beside Shirley's and whispered, "One day, you won't be the favorite, and I won't need her approval anymore." But I had no idea how soon that day would come. By the time senior year ended, my heart was already packed. Mom made a grand dinner the night before I left for university. She toasted to Shirley, who had just been accepted into a modeling agency. "To my shining star," she said. Everyone clapped. I sat quietly, my own scholarship letter folded in my lap. When dinner ended, Shirley hugged me like she was doing me a favor. Mom barely looked up. I wanted her to stop me at the door to say she'd miss me, but she didn't. So I left a note on her dresser. "You'll miss me one day, when you realize what you lost." I took the night bus out of town, staring out the window as the city lights blurred. Each mile between me and home felt like breathing again. I promised myself two things that night. 1, I would never go back. 2, I would never need anyone's permission to exist again. But promises are fragile things, especially when fate decides to test them. College was chaos, noisy hallways, late-night ramen, and new beginnings. But I didn't expect to find family there. My roommate, Irene Lawson, was everything I wasn't: bold, sarcastic, full of light. She called her parents every night, and when she laughed, it filled the room. One day, she found me crying after a bad phone call with my mother, the first one since I left. Mom had only called to ask if I could send Shirley money for her career. Irene handed me a tissue and said, "You don't owe them your peace." That Thanksgiving, she invited me to her family's home. I hesitated, but went. Her mother hugged me at the door. Her father pulled out a chair for me at the table. At dinner, they prayed, laughed, and asked about my dreams. Nobody compared me to anyone. Nobody looked past me. When Irene's mom said, "You're welcome here anytime," I almost cried. That night, I realized something. Blood makes you related, but love makes you family. I didn't know it then, but that warmth would be the armor I'd need for what was coming next. To survive, I worked a lot. I walked dogs, waited tables, and took weekend shifts at a diner near campus. My scholarship covered tuition, but not the loneliness. One afternoon, I was walking 3 Labradors through a busy street when a black car screeched around the corner, missing me by inches. The driver jumped out, panicked. "I'm so sorry, miss." But the man in the back seat caught my attention. He was tall, dark-haired, and dressed in a suit that screamed money. When he stepped out, the city noise dimmed. "Are you hurt?" he asked, voice smooth but commanding. That was Declan Vincennes, the son of the man who ran half the city's underground empire. I didn't know who he was then. I only knew his eyes lingered a second too long, as if searching for something familiar. When his driver offered me cash for inconvenience, I refused. "I don't need your money," I said. Declan smiled faintly. "Then maybe I owe you a favor instead." A week later, fate cashed it in and pulled me into a world where danger had a heartbeat and my past refused to stay buried. I didn't expect to see Declan again. But a week later, he showed up outside the diner where I worked, leaning casually against a luxury car like he belonged in another universe. "I came for coffee," he said, smirking, "and maybe to check if you've forgiven my driver." His confidence irritated me. "You don't strike me as the coffee type." "I'm full of surprises," he replied, sliding into a booth. From that day, he became a regular, always ordering black coffee and leaving a tip too big to ignore. He asked questions about my classes, my dreams, my past. I answered carefully, never revealing too much. Still, he noticed things most people didn't. "You don't like being seen, do you?" "Maybe I got used to being invisible." He smiled, but his eyes darkened. "You shouldn't have to be." There was something magnetic about him, dangerous, but grounding. I didn't know what his world was made of, but I could feel the weight of it pressing against mine. And though I didn't realize it yet, fate had just tied my path to a man whose enemies had the power to destroy everything I'd rebuilt. Declan started showing up everywhere, near my classes, at the park, even at the library once. He said it was coincidence. I didn't believe him. But I couldn't deny the pull. There was something about him, the quiet intensity, the way he looked at me like I mattered. Still, little things didn't add up. The way his driver always scanned the street, the scar on his hand, the whispers when he walked into the diner. One night after closing, he offered me a ride home. I hesitated but got in. Inside, the scent of leather and danger filled the air. He said softly, "You shouldn't walk alone this late. Some parts of the city aren't safe." "And you are," I teased. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "That depends on who's asking." For a second, the city lights flashed across his face, and I saw something there, power wrapped in pain. I told myself I could walk away any time. But deep down, I already knew. This man was a storm I wasn't ready for. One night, Irene burst into our room, holding her phone. "Shiloh, you won't believe this, that guy who keeps coming to see you. He's Declan Vincennes." My stomach dropped. The Vincenzos ran the city's most feared empire. Money laundering, underground trades, and political deals that disappeared people. I stared at the article, Declan beside his father, looking untouchable. When I saw him the next day, I confronted him. "You didn't tell me who you were." He looked genuinely apologetic. "Would it have changed how you saw me?" "Of course it would have." He sighed. "Then I wanted you to know me before the name did." Part of me wanted to run. The other part remembered the softness in his eyes, the way he listened like my words mattered. "I'm not like him, Shiloh," he said quietly. "I'm trying to make things right in my own way." But right and wrong blurred when it came to people like him. And though I should have stayed away, something about his honesty felt real, maybe, because it was wrapped in so much pain. I didn't know it yet, but my mother's world was about to collide with his, and my heart was standing right in the middle. It had been 2 years since I last heard her voice, but when my phone rang that morning, the name, Mom, froze me. I almost didn't answer, almost. "Shiloh," her voice was trembling. "Your sister, she's in trouble." For a second, I couldn't breathe. Shirley, the golden child. "She got involved with some people," Mom continued. "Dangerous people. I don't know what to do." I wanted to say, "Now you need me," after all these years, but the anger dissolved when I heard the fear in her voice. "Send me her address," I said finally. "I'll see what I can do." That night I told Declan about it. His face tightened. What kind of trouble? Something about debts, I replied. He exchanged a glance with his driver. I might know who she's dealing with. Stay out of it, Shiloh, please. But I couldn't. Family was complicated, even the ones who broke you. And so, I walked straight into a world I didn't understand, one that Declan had been trying to protect me from all along. Shirley's apartment was chaos, broken bottles, torn clothes, unpaid bills. She looked nothing like the sister I remembered. Shiloh, she whispered, eyes wide. You came. Mom said you were in trouble. She burst into tears. I owed money to the wrong people. They said if I don't pay soon. Before she finished, a knock echoed at the door. A tall man in a black suit entered, flanked by guards. His accent was heavy. You must be the sister. She's late on her payments. I froze. I'd seen him before in one of Declan's cars. He smirked. Small world, huh? Mr. Vincenzo's girlfriend. The words hit like a bullet. Shirley's head snapped up. You're dadding him. The man laughed. Maybe he'll settle her debt then. When they left, Shirley turned on me, furious. You took everything from me again, even this. I stood there shaking, realizing the irony. The man who'd saved me once might be the same man destroying my sister. But the truth was deeper, darker. And soon, I'd learn my family's connection to the Vincenzo empire went far beyond coincidence. After the confrontation with Shirley, I couldn't sleep. Declan's name kept echoing in my mind, and the way that debt collector had smirked like he knew something I didn't. The next day, I went to see Declan. I need the truth, I said. Why does your family have anything to do with mine? He hesitated. Shiloh, some things are better buried. Not for me, I snapped. Not when my sister's life is on the line. He sighed and looked away. Your mother used to work for my father years ago. She wasn't just an employee. She knew things. I felt my knees weaken. What things? He shook his head. She made a deal once, and it changed everything. I left his office with my heart pounding. My mother, the same woman who couldn't stand to look at me, had been tied to a mafia empire all along. Maybe that was why she feared me leaving. Maybe she was protecting herself, not me. But deep down, I knew this was only the beginning of the truth. I went home that weekend. The house felt smaller than I remembered, full of echoes and ghosts. Mom looked older, frailer. You shouldn't have come, she said. Too late, I replied. Tell me what you did. She froze, then sighed. I worked for the Vincenzos before you were born, your father. She stopped herself. My father. Tears filled her eyes. He wasn't who you think. She handed me an old box from under her bed. Inside were letters, receipts, and one leather notebook, the Vincenzo ledger. It had records of transactions and a familiar name, Hannah C. Dalton, my mother. Your father tried to expose them, she whispered. They killed him. I did everything to protect you and your sister. By giving her everything and pretending I didn't exist. She didn't answer. That night, I read the ledger under the yellow light of my old room. Every page screamed danger, and a past I was never meant to uncover. But now that I had, there was no turning back. Declan showed up the next morning unannounced. You found the ledger, didn't you? I nodded slowly. Tell me the rest. He closed the door and whispered, Your father was investigating my family. My father wanted him silenced, but he didn't want your mother hurt. What do you mean? She was pregnant with twins. The room spun. Are you saying? Yes, my father knew. He ordered his men to leave her alive. That's why she's always been afraid. Everything made sense now. The favoritism, the fear, the distance. Mom hadn't hated me. She'd feared what I represented, the truth she couldn't bury. I looked at Declan, tears burning my eyes. And you, why didn't you tell me? He looked away. Because I didn't want to lose you before I earned you. I wanted to believe him, but something in his voice told me there was still more he wasn't saying. Shirley called me out of the blue. Shiloh, I need to see you, she whispered. It's about Mom. When I arrived, she looked pale and restless. You were right. Mom's been lying to us, but not just about the past, about you. What do you mean? She pulled out an envelope, one addressed to me, dated years ago. She made me promise not to give this to you. Inside was a letter from my father. His handwriting was shaky but determined. If you're reading this, it means I failed to keep you safe. They'll come for the truth one day, but you, my Shiloh, must never forget who you are. You are stronger than the lies that built this family. I looked at Shirley, speechless. She bit her lip. I was jealous of you all my life, and I didn't even know why. Mom protected you by hiding you in plain sight. Tears filled my eyes. Protected me from what? Before she could answer, the sound of glass shattering filled the room. A bullet lodged into the wall beside us. Someone didn't want us talking. We ducked behind the couch as another shot broke through the window. Shirley screamed. I grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the back door. We ran until my lungs burned. Outside, flames erupted. Someone had set her car on fire. A black SUV sped off down the street. I caught a glimpse of a silver emblem on the bumper, the Vincenzo crest. Declan's family. By the time we reached safety, Shirley was shaking uncontrollably. You think he did this? I don't know, I whispered, but whoever did wanted us silent. Later that night, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Stop digging, Shiloh, or next time it won't be a warning. I stared at the screen, fear and fury warring inside me. Maybe they thought they could scare me into silence, but they didn't know who they were dealing with anymore. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't the forgotten twin. I was the one they should have never underestimated. Declan showed up at my apartment the next morning, unannounced, like always. He looked tense, almost guilty. I heard about what happened, he said softly. Are you okay? I crossed my arms. Did your family send that message? His jaw tightened. No, but if someone did, I'll find out who. Then tell me the truth, I demanded. How long have you known who I really am? He hesitated too long. Since the first week we met. The air left my lungs. You knew, all this time. I didn't use you, Shiloh, I swear it. I was trying to protect you. By lying. He reached out, but I stepped back. You sound just like my mother, always deciding what's best for me. For the first time, I saw fear flicker in his eyes, not for me, but of losing me. He whispered, you have no idea how dangerous this is. Then maybe, I said, voice trembling with anger. It's time they find out how dangerous I can be. That was the day my fear began to burn into something new. Something sharp. Irene tried to talk me out of it. You're playing with fire, Shiloh. You can't fight the Vincenzos. Then I'll burn smarter, I said. I spent nights going through the ledger, tracing names, dates, secret accounts. The deeper I dug, the clearer it became. My father had uncovered something massive, a deal between the Vincenzos and a cosmetics company called Sonia Beauty. The same one merging with Declan's firm. When I confronted Declan, his silence said everything. You knew, I said, shaking. You knew your company was built on the same corruption that killed my father. He tried to explain. It wasn't me. But it's your name, I snapped. Your empire, your blood. He stepped closer, then let me fix it. I stared at him. You can't fix a legacy built on graves. Something inside me hardened that night. If the Vincenzos had buried the truth, I would be the one to dig it up and destroy them from the inside. Even if it meant destroying the man I'd begun to love. Declan disappeared for a week. No calls, no visits, just silence. Then one night, an envelope slid under my door. Inside, a flash drive and a note. You were right. This is the truth. Be careful who you trust. I plugged it in. What I saw made my blood run cold. Scanned documents, emails, ledgers, proof of everything. Bribes, assassinations, cover-ups. And in one email thread, my mother's name. She wasn't a victim. She'd helped them hide evidence after my father's death. I dropped the laptop, shaking. My mother, the woman I pitied. The next day, I went to her. She cried when I confronted her. I did it to keep you alive, Shiloh. They threatened to kill you both. And you still stayed loyal to them. I stayed loyal to survival, she whispered. That was the night I stopped being her daughter and started being my father's revenge. Declan returned, but something had changed. His eyes were darker, his voice heavier. They know you have the files, he said. My father's men are watching you. Let them, I said coldly. I've spent my life being invisible. Maybe it's time they see me. He looked at me with that same heartbreak I'd seen once before, when I told him I was done believing in people. Shiloh, listen to me, he said. If you go down this path, there's no coming back. I smiled faintly. Maybe that's the point. He exhaled slowly, stepping closer. Then let me stand beside you. I wanted to trust him. God, I did. But the lines between love and betrayal had blurred too many times. So I whispered, if you ever have to choose between me and your family, choose wisely. Because I already had. I started planning quietly, methodically. Late nights, encrypted emails, fake accounts, every move calculated. With Irene's help, I reached out to journalists, lawyers, anyone willing to take down a Vincenzo. But it wasn't enough. I needed someone inside. That's when I met Zane Boston, CEO of Sonia Beauty, Declan's corporate rival. He smiled like he'd been waiting for me. I've heard of you, he said, the girl who caught a Vincenzo's heart. And maybe, I replied, the one who'll break his legacy. He leaned forward. Then let's make a deal. By the time I left his office, I had a new ally, one who had the money, power, and motive to help me bring the Vincenzos to their knees. But I didn't realize until much later, Zane wasn't helping me out of kindness. He had his own score to settle. And in his game, I was just the perfect weapon. We set the plan in motion like thieves in the night. Zane supplied the legal muscle and the front-facing evidence. Irene handled the day-to-day distractions. Declan, reluctantly, secretly, whispered where to cut first. My role was simple and cold, be the face that drew fire. First, a leaked account, a single. Damning spreadsheet planted in an investigative journalist's inbox. It named shell companies, P.O. boxes, and transfers that couldn't be explained away. The piece dropped within 48 hours. My phone exploded with calls. Mom's number flashed like a red light and I didn't answer. Public outrage followed. The Vincenzos watched from behind armored glass and clenched their jaws. My name was in whispers, the girl with the files. People I'd known as distant acquaintances suddenly looked at me differently, with fear, with curiosity. For every headline that praised me, I wrote another line on my ledger of grief. Each victory felt hollow when I thought of the ledger pages soaked in my father's handwriting. It had been his courage that started this. It had been my mother's choices that forced me to finish it. That night, as I walked home, I felt a presence. A man stepped out from a shadowed doorway, hands folded like a gentleman, but with the eyes of an executioner. You think you can set my family on fire and walk away? He asked. My pulse stuttered. He smiled, almost kindly. Consider this the first strike back. He handed me something folded, a Polaroid of me taken last week, standing at the entrance of a courthouse. On the back, a single line, you will lose more than your secrets. The city lights blurred and my stomach dropped. Someone was playing a game darker than mine, and they just raised the stakes. The Polaroid sat on my kitchen table like a nameless threat. I showed Declan and he went white. They have reach, he said. More than I thought. We scrambled. Security details, safe houses, burner phones. Zane tightened his grip on the PR narrative. Irene kept everyone on schedule. But the sense of being hunted seeped into everything. Then came the whisper that cut deeper than any threat. An internal leak. Files from Zane's legal team had surfaced in a rival outlet. Someone close to our operation was feeding information to the Vincenzos. Trust cracked like thin ice. My mind flicked to the people I'd come to rely on. Declan swore loyalty in a way that left no room for doubt. Zane's gaze was steady but guarded. Irene, light and open, had access to everything. My mother, she was a dark well of secrets. I staged tests. I fed different bits of fabricated info to each channel and watched which one walked into the light. One by one, the suspects revealed themselves not by what they said, but by what left their lips in the wrong room. The leak traced back to a place I never expected: my sister. Shirley's name, connected to a quiet freelance assistant she'd hired months ago, showed email headers and timestamps that matched the moments our strategy shifted. I wanted to laugh and then scream. She was fragile, spoiled, the portrait of my mother's preference, not a conspirator. When I confronted her, she broke down. "They said I'd lose everything if I didn't help," she sobbed. "They said they'd take Hannah, they said." Before she could finish, the lights went out. Footsteps pounded upstairs. A voice I knew too well spoke from the dark. "Thought you would tattle, little traitor." I heard the click of a gun being cocked. I'm not proud of what I did next. Instinct is an animal that does not wait for permission or morals. The man in our living room didn't expect resistance from two girls he'd been told were fragile. Irene moved like someone who had spent years waiting to protect someone else. She tackled the man from behind with a ferocity I'd never seen in her. Shirley screamed and shoved a vase, and in the scramble a shot rang out, not from the intruder, but from outside the window, a bullet punching a hole in the plaster like a punctuation mark of the chaos we'd invited in. The intruder fled under the cover of noise, but he left a card on the coffee table, the Vincenzo crest and a single word: leave. After that night, the game changed. Whoever attacked wasn't just sending signals. They were trying to fracture us, to make us panic. I sent a message to every contact I had in the city's darker corners. If the Vincenzos wanted war, I would find allies in alleyways I'd never stepped foot in before. I met people who traded in favors and grudges: a disgraced councilman with an old score against the Vincenzos, a woman who ran a shipping dock that favored people who paid her more than money could buy. Declan's silence thickened. He drank in the privacy of bar corners, hands trembling sometimes, other times steady with resolve. One night, he finally told me why he hadn't completely cut his ties with his father. "My father saved me from a fate worse than death," he said. "But his method warped me. He taught me how to survive by being silent. I can't undo that by yelling." "You can't stand with me if you're still holding his hand," I said. "I can stand," he replied, "but only if you let me carry some of the fire." I looked at him, at the man whose name carried empires and executions, and realized there was a difference between being used and being chosen. I chose him, and in that choice lay a risk I wasn't ready to admit I'd taken. That night, a voicemail waited. My mother's voice, whispered and urgent. "Meet me where the willow bends, come alone." I turned off my phone and felt the whole city shift under my feet. The willow tree sat on the river's bend like it had always been there, patient and secretive. I walked under it with a small flashlight and my pulse loud in my ears. Hannah was already there, wrapped in a cheap coat that did nothing to hide her thinness. When she saw me, she folded into herself like someone who'd been waiting for either forgiveness or punishment. "Why now?" I asked. "After all the times you chose silence, you choose to meet me now." She looked at the river, eyes watery. "I thought if I kept you hidden, I kept you safe. But you pulled the ledger into the light. You forced my hand." "So you gambled with my life anyway," I said. "You knew what would happen if the Vincenzos realized we had evidence." "I didn't think you would use it like this," she admitted. "I thought you'd do nothing. I thought I'd lose control." "Control," I laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "You don't control destiny. You only try to steer it when it suits you." She reached into her coat and handed me a small envelope. Inside was a name and a location: San Marco Marina, Jarvis Dock 4. Below it, my father's handwriting. If you ever need proof beyond ledger lines, he kept what he feared most there. "Why didn't you tell me?" I whispered. "I was protecting you from being a target," she said. "But I did stay close enough to move the pieces when necessary." I folded the paper and felt a hollow place open inside me. My mother's protection had roots in bargaining with demons. I thanked her and left, mind already making maps. The dock meant something that went beyond ledgers, a chest, a safekeep. Perhaps the last confession my father had hoped to hide. As my cab pulled away, my phone buzzed with an unknown notification. You have 1 hour. I understood then. Whatever waited at Jarvis Dock 4 would either be the vindication I needed or the coffin we'd been avoiding. The dock smelled of salt and rust, of old promises and water that took more than it gave. I slipped through the chain-link fence and moved toward Jarvis Dock 4, every sense alert. I had 1 hour stamped on the message, and I intended to use it all. The moon was a thin scar above the water. Somewhere, a gull cried like a sentinel. At the marked shipping crate, I found a metal lockbox, small, heavy, and remarkably mundane. My fingers shook as I fitted the code from my father's note. The lid creaked open, and inside lay a single, battered envelope and a key the size of a promise. I pulled out the letter first, my father's handwriting, smudged but burning with intention. Shiloh, if you read this, you've found the only truth I could bury. The ledger is a map, not the whole story. There is one place they keep what they fear the most, names. Go to the address on the back. Be careful of who smiles. On the back of the letter, an address. A law office downtown I had known as a child when my father took me there once for an errand. The key had a tag, HD Vault Basement, Suite 9. My phone buzzed again, an incoming call, no name. I hesitated and answered. A voice I knew too well whispered, "You were warned, Shiloh. Walk away." I clutched the key. "Who is this?" I demanded. Silence and then a click. Then a text, "We are already inside." A cold, terrible clarity settled over me. They weren't only watching docks and cars. They were in the buildings I trusted. They were in the rooms where I thought to hide my victories. I turned toward the shadowed line of crates, searching for a silhouette, for movement, for betrayal. A light flicked on across the water and a small boat began to glide toward the dock. Its registration plates blurred, 2 figures hunched low. I realized, with the raw punch of adrenaline, that Jarvis Dock was not the end of the map. It was the beginning of an ambush. The boat's engine purred low, too controlled to be random. I ducked behind the crates and steadied my breath. 2 men disembarked, sharp suits, matching movements, professionals. "Take the box if she has it," one said. "No loose ends." My pulse thundered. Then headlights flared from the opposite side of the dock, Declan's car. He stepped out slowly, his coat open, hands visible. "You're making this too public," he said, his voice low but deadly. One of the men aimed his gun. I didn't think, I ran. The gun went off, ricocheting off metal. Declan tackled the shooter before the second man lunged toward me. I swung the box like a weapon, caught him across the jaw, and heard the crunch of bone. Sirens wailed in the distance. Not police, I realized, but Declan's own men. Within seconds, the attackers were disarmed, tossed into the back of a black SUV, and gone. Declan turned to me, bleeding from his arm. "You should have told me you came here alone," he said through gritted teeth. "You should have told me your father sent them," I shot back. He froze. "How did you?" I recognized his men, the Vincenzo crest. His eyes softened with something like sorrow. "He wanted to scare you off. I told him you wouldn't stop. He said, then you'll burn with her." I held up the key. "Then let's see what's worth dying for." The night wind whipped around us, carrying salt and secrets. As we drove off, I caught a glimpse of someone standing at the edge of the dock, my mother, coat fluttering, watching us disappear into the dark. The law office was abandoned, its nameplate dusty, its doors chained. We broke in through the side entrance. The basement smelled like mold and paper. At the end of the hallway, a door marked Suite 9. HD Vault gleamed under a flickering light. I slid the key into the lock, and it clicked like a heartbeat. Inside were filing cabinets, boxes, and one steel safe bolted to the floor. I turned the dial with trembling hands. It opened to reveal a folder stamped VINCENZO Trust, Confidential. Inside were documents nomming politicians, police chiefs, even judges, all on the Vincenzo payroll. But tucked beneath them was something worse, an old family photo. My mother, my father, Declan's father, and two little girls with identical curls, me and Shirley. Declan stepped closer, face ashen. What the hell is this? My father worked for yours, I whispered. He must have known too much. Declan reached for another file. This is a partnership deed. Hannah and my father signed it 25 years ago. She wasn't just married to your dad, she was laundering money through him. The air turned to ice. You're lying. He handed me a document, Hannah Vincenzo, her maiden signature linked to shell accounts. I'm not, he said quietly. Your mother built this empire with mine. Your father tried to stop them. That's why he died. I stared at the papers until the words blurred. My hands shook so hard the folder slipped. Everything I'd believed, every wound, every act of rebellion had been a lie. I wasn't the victim of my mother's favoritism. I was her collateral. And Shirley, maybe she was her insurance policy. We drove back in silence, the night thick with revelations. Declan finally spoke. You can still walk away, Shiloh. I'll protect you. I don't want protection, I said. I want the truth. When we arrived at Irene's apartment, she was waiting, eyes red, phone in hand. Your mother called, she said. She said to meet her at the old mansion. She sounded desperate. I didn't hesitate. I had to face her. The mansion was darker than I remembered. Candles lined the stairs like a ritual. Hannah waited in the parlor, hands clasped. Shirley stood beside her, pale and trembling. You found the vault, Hannah said softly. Then you know why I couldn't let you stay. You killed him, I said. You and Vincenzo. Her voice cracked. He was going to expose us all. I thought I could fix it, but they made me watch instead. Fix it, I said, shaking. You built your life on his blood. Shirley burst into tears. Mom, please stop. But Hannah just smiled faintly. You both were born the same day, but one of you had to be the light and the other the cover. I loved you both, but I needed one child the world could see, and one it couldn't. The words landed like gunshots. I realized then, she had chosen me to vanish, to carry the burden of secrecy while Shirley lived freely. I turned to leave, and that's when the window shattered. A bullet tore through the room, grazing Hannah's shoulder. Declan's men stormed in. They found us. The past had officially come to collect its debts. Chaos erupted. Shirley screamed as another shot ripped through the chandelier, glass raining down like sparks. Declan dragged me behind the grand piano, gun drawn. Hannah, bleeding but alive, crawled toward the fireplace. The ledger, she gasped. It's in the wall. Bullets tore through the curtains as Declan fired back. Irene appeared in the doorway, not panicked, not scared, smiling. Hello, Shiloh, she said. You really thought I was on your side. My breath caught. Irene. Oh, don't look so shocked, she sneered. You think the Vincenzos didn't know where the files were. I was the insurance all along. Declan tried to aim, but Irene shot first, not at him, but at the gas lamp near the wall. Flames erupted instantly. Hannah screamed as the fire spread. Shirley tried to pull her up. We have to go. I lunged forward, tackling Irene. The gun skidded away, both of us fighting amid the smoke and heat. You ruined my life, I yelled. She laughed bitterly. I didn't ruin it. I just made sure someone paid the price. We rolled, and the floor gave way under us. Declan grabbed my arm at the last second, pulling me back up as the floor collapsed beneath Irene. Her scream vanished in the flames. The mansion burned, the past with it. Hannah slumped against the wall, coughing blood. Shiloh, take it, the ledger, end it. I took her hand, and for a second the anger broke. I saw not the woman who betrayed me, but the one who'd once sung me lullabies in the dark. She smiled weakly. Maybe now you'll be free. And then she was gone. The sun rose over ashes. The mansion was gone. Hannah's body lay among what used to be her kingdom. Shirley was silent, eyes hollow. Declan stood beside me, soot-streaked, clutching the ledger. It's over, he said. But I knew better. Revenge doesn't end, it evolves. I took the ledger and handed it to the same journalist who started the storm months ago. Publish everything, I said. Let them all burn clean. The headlines the next day rewrote the city's story. Politicians fell. The Vincenzo empire fractured. Declan's father vanished. Shirley moved to another state. We spoke rarely. There was love still, hidden under too many ruins to uncover. Declan left too, chasing peace in a life without shadows. He asked me to come with him once. I told him I couldn't, not yet. Months later, I stood by the river, where the willow bent and whispered to the water. I scattered a handful of ashes, Hannah's, into the current. "I forgive you," I said, though part of me didn't. A firefly landed on my palm, its light pulsing like a heartbeat. I smiled, a broken, quiet smile. I realized something then. I'd spent years wanting to be seen. But maybe some of us were born to glow only in the dark, not because we're hidden, but because we shine where others fear to look. As the firefly rose, and the city lights flickered behind it, I whispered, "When we were fireflies, the night never felt this long." Then I turned, walking back toward a dawn that, for once, belonged to me.